So now all right, welcome back. We're gonna talk about climate smart communities in this section. And just so we all have a common foundation of that program. So you are not alone when it comes to climate smart communities, in part because I think one of the coolest things about the program is it does visualize who in the state of New York is doing this work. So right now you're one of these blue dots, and we want to get you to be one of the brown or silver dots. And look at this nice little cluster around the Hudson Valley, right? We're living in like a real hotbed of this work, which is really exciting. And we're here to help each other. And there's a really cool thing you can do with the Climate Smart Communities website that maybe not all of you know about. So there's this way where you can filter by action, and you can actually then take a peek and find municipalities that have gotten points for that action in their filing. And then you can peek at what they submitted and see what they did, and actually view their filing report, which is super cool. So, and then you can reach out to them if you want to have a chat, all right, and ask them about how they did it. So once you go into their report, you can see what they did. But this is still like, it's a report, right? And it's a document. It feels maybe a little dry. And so truth be told, local champions, what we're trying to do with this pilot is spring into that void of people working together in a more direct, personal way. The overwhelmingness. Climate change is overwhelming. And many of us are drawn to climate smart communities because it lays out these actionable steps. And oh wow, like we know what we need to do, we just need to do it. But really we need some help in actually doing the things. And there are so many things, like there are so many actions. With climate smart communities, there's over 100 actions. But that makes sense, right? Because climate change is such a sprawling problem. And so I tried to even like make a visualization on the screen here of the 100 plus actions. It couldn't fit them all on the page, even if I had like shrunk them down really tiny. Like there's just a lot to scroll through if you spent time on their website, just scrolling through all the actions. And at a certain point you might start to glaze over. So we just want you to actually be reassured that this is a thorough program, right? It's almost anything you can think of, there's an action for it. And really we want you to think of it more as an a la carte menu where eventually you keep going back to the restaurant, you might get to taste all the things, but let's sit down and let's just focus on what you're going to order today. And that's gonna, I'm hoping that will come into light when you're working with the Cornell Cooperative Extension partners. They're gonna guide you through selecting which items off the menu make the most sense for you. The other thing about climate smart communities is that the program keeps evolving. And that makes sense too, because the science behind climate change, it keeps evolving, and there's new technology and techniques to address these issues, and also the social work that goes into how we approach or how we think about these actions is also shifting, especially with climate justice. So actually, when you go to the session page for this onboarding session, you'll see one of the homework assignments is to scope out this spreadsheet. This is what they call the action checklist. It's provided by, I didn't create this page, and I didn't create this. It's provided by Climate Smart Communities program. And so what they do is they actually go through and put it in this format. And they also point out what's new, because they're often including new actions. And then there are some that might be phased out. So it's a big program, it's a sprawling program, and it's not set in stone. And for example, there's a lot of new research coming out about composting and food waste and how that is having a huge impact on greenhouse gases. And there's new legislation coming out. There's the food donation and food scraps recycling law that goes into effect January 2022. So a lot of the new actions you'll find here are around organics management, just as an example. Another example is the new action Community Repair, which just launched in the past few months. And I do want to take a moment to remember John Wackman, who very suddenly, tragically passed away in January. And we'd actually scheduled him to be one of your guest speakers. And he was just an amazing person. He was the real leader of the repair movement in the Hudson Valley, and had just published a book about it and was doing a lot of speaking. So he will really be missed, but we want to dedicate that session about community building in his memory. But it's amazing, like he's almost single-handedly, not single-handedly, I mean, his whole thing is about working with community, but he really led the charge in making this an action anyone can get points for. Okay, so get your game on. You may have noticed that I've been talking a lot about points. Anybody here like sports?
Yep.
What's your sport, Dan?
Baseball is probably number one.
Baseball. Okay. All right. Anybody else? Sports, credit card points programs. Anyone?
There you go.
Paige, I know you're guilty as charged.
Yeah. I like
climate change, honestly, like working on climate change can be discouraging. It's so epic. There's so much to do. And the gamification part of climate smart communities gives you some goalposts, you know, it gives you these certification levels. It gives you a sense of satisfaction, honestly, and like being able, you know, there's some people critique it and say like, oh, it's a lot like checking off these boxes, but there's something that honestly is motivating about that. And so these certification levels, you know, bronze, silver, there is no gold yet. They're still working on figuring out what that's going to be. Fame, glory, recognition, those things, you know, this is actually what it looks like. You get a little vinyl plaque to put on your town hall. But it does give you a sense of personal pride, a sense of accomplishment, signals to your community that this is a thing that you're, as a community, you're taking seriously. It also proves to the state that you're taking it seriously, and it elevates your standing when you apply for grants. So that is literally like, you know, if you have people who are doubters about this, literally when they go and review grant applications, you get more weight in the evaluation if you are a climate smart community. So how does the game part of it work? Firstly, know that the main way that you're going to be interacting with the Climate Smart Community Program is through this website. So does anybody not have an account on the Climate Smart Communities website yet? Okay, so that's, if you go to the session page after this session, that's a piece of your homework, is to create an account. Bless you, Dan.
Thank you.
Yeah. And you're then going to figure out, does your town have an account? Okay. And the goal here is for you to have an account, for your town to have an account, and for you to basically be the owner of that town account. So you as a CSC task force coordinator, which is what you all are, you would have management over your municipal dashboard. Okay, so this is your first step on this journey. And if you're having any trouble, let me know. There's a wonderful person at CSC named Willow who can make sure that you are hooked up to your municipal dashboard. But here's a screenshot of mine in the Village of Rhinebeck. This is what it looks like after you get bronze, and you can see, you can click on the reviewer notes. After they review your filing, they give you all this commentary on your actions. And yeah, so this is like what you might hear people call the portal. And this is and then this is the collapsed view of all the actions. And so they're grouped into these 12, what they call pledge element categories. You might see the abbreviation PE a lot. That stands for pledge element, as in you're pledging to do these actions. So PEs. And there are 2 mandatory actions under PE1. So again, this is going to be some of the first things that we're going to concentrate on is getting you named officially as the Climate Smart Community Task Force Coordinator. Okay, and that needs specific official documentation. You need either a resolution passed or an executive memorandum from your town supervisor approved by the town board naming you as the coordinator. And then we'll be working on, some of you have task forces already and some of you don't. We're going to be working on that too, because these are mandatory, meaning that you have to do these if you intend to file for bronze. Okay. And then in order to get to bronze, you also need at least 3 of your pledge element actions to be what they call priority. There are 13 of these priority ones total. And you can choose 3 that you're going to work on. And they've been weighted this way because they're more important. They usually get a larger number of points for doing them. They might be foundational, big important ones. So as I mentioned before, well, this is very like a la carte, and you can pick and choose out of 100+ actions. These priority and mandatory ones, this is a way for the Climate Smart Community Program to dictate a little bit, to have a little bit of a guide into what they want you to do. So it's a mix of flexibility and control there. Okay. And then you'll see, this is like the expanded view of these actions. Now we're kind of digging in each action, you kind of like dig in. Nested under the pledge element categories, they have their affiliated actions. And then each action has a certain number of points. You need to get to 120 points to get bronze. Most people try to file with a little bit more than 120 points. You have a little bit of a buffer in case some of them are rejected. And some pledge element actions have these variable points. So when you start playing with the website and selecting which items you want to do, you'll see how the points actually stack up. And so for now, I just want you, after you get your access to the portal, spend some time just playing around here and getting familiar with how the site works, because this will be one of your mainstays. Okay, so say you click on the underlined title of the action here. Once you're signed in, this is what it looks like. And you can see here the number 8 for 8 points. That's a drop down. This is a variable points one. So you can select how many points you're asking for. And then each action, you're going to write like a narrative blurb about how you did the action, and a narrative explaining the documentation that you're uploading. And there's the spot at the bottom here where you browse and upload. Basically, you're like gathering receipts, receipts for the solar panels to show that you actually installed them, and uploading those to prove it. But here's the most important piece, actually. It's clicking on this link. This is actually the most critical piece, because each of these actions has a whole PDF here that pops up as an overlay. You can download it as a PDF. And this gives you all the info about what exactly you need to do, all the details. And this is where you can get into figuring out like this variable points puzzle. Here's what it looks like if you click on like, what do I need to do to submit? how do the points stack up? So this is just like, it gives you exactly what you need to do. Okay, so yeah, I do want you to go and spend some time just playing with that website and getting familiar with it, because that's going to be your friend. So get your government on. Time is going to fly. Weird things are happening with time. I don't know about you all, but pandemic time is like weird time warp time. And you know, I want you to keep these timelines in mind. Filing for bronze with climate smart communities, there's 3 deadlines per year. They're usually April, July, and January. Okay. So I think for us, knowing what stage you're at, and you're going to be doing your work on your certification assessment, maybe some of you will be able to file for July 2nd. We'll just have to see. I would really doubt if any of you are there for April 2nd. But otherwise, I think most of us will be thinking about filing in January of next year, around this time next year. Okay. And so what happens when you submit your bronze filing, you have all the documentation loaded in, you have everything all written up and tidy, you hit the shiny submit button, and then you're locked out of that portal for about 8 weeks. And while the CSC reviewers go in and they pour over all of your documentation, and then they email you with their comments and they tell you whether or not you pass muster. You cannot even click submit unless you are requesting 120 points or more. So you really have to have your ducks in a row before you can even start getting feedback. In that official manner, that is. So another cheesy stock photo that makes me laugh. I relate deeply to this woman. I'm not gonna lie, the vibe of the filing process, using the portal, gathering all this documentation, getting the receipts, feels like an audit. It feels like you're doing taxes. You might have moments where you're like, oh my God, I'm in the belly of the beast of bureaucracy. Especially if you were to try to do this alone, as I did. It can be daunting. And you're just like, oh, you're digging through those receipts at town hall. It's going to be an unavoidable part of this. You just have to stick it out. And this is because the Climate Smart Communities is a program of the municipal government. That is the modality through which we are doing this climate work. You are here because you believe in local government playing a role in climate work. So it's going to feel pretty governmenty. And you might get to the point where you're like, why am I doing, like, I just want to do the actions. I don't want to have to document them and then like report on documenting them. And because especially some of these actions, especially the ones working with the community, can be really fun. And then you're like, why do I have to do this paperwork? Why am I doing this? Why do I have to prove that I did this? And really it comes down to like wanting to get the grant money. Honestly, let's be brutally honest here. We're doing this because local government controls things like the road, the sewer system, the zoning policies, energy policies. These are public assets and operations that need to be transformed. And so we need public buy-in, and we need buy-in from elected leaders to tackle that transformation. And let's be real, we need the money to be able to do this. And Climate Smart Communities gives out, not last year, but typically gives out about $10 million every year. And so here's the other timeline. The grants, the CSC grants are on what is called the CFA, or Consolidated Funding Application. And so this is another really good timeline to have in the back of your head. Usually the grants are announced in May, and then the deadline is in July, and then you don't even know if you get selected until December. So going back to that thought of like weird time warp time, we're talking about like an extended timeline. We're talking about planning ahead. We're talking about a lot of planning, and then being aware of these timelines, taking the time to build your official support, your community support, and communicate about what your plans are, and then actually hopefully getting the money. And And that also leads me back to my final point here, which is why all the paperwork, this audit-like process of filing. It's because that $10 million in climate smart community grants is actually taxpayer money. So that money needs to be used very specifically and responsibly, and it needs to be accounted for. And that's why we're doing this, to make progress and to do it in a responsible way that's for the greater good.